Privet, Katila, Wanniruski desu. So, um, we're live. Finally, we're live.
Yeah.
So I'm with. Okay, actually, I was going to ask you this before I went live. How do I pronounce your? What am I supposed to refer to you
Oh,
as?
I'm Clossington, my dude. I'm
Clossington.
Clossington. Yeah.
Classic. Well, that's pretty. It's pretty unique. So,
Yeah.
how did you get Clossington?
Well, without getting too deep into the weeds of doxing myself, um, it's just a nickname for me from high school,
Ah,
and whatever,
man,
whatever.
man, that I would like to hear the story of that and how that came about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
Whatever.
Well, so this guy, you might not heard of him. He actually only has 80 subscribers, but he's worth 1,000 times more than that. You might think, oh, who's this? Who's this plebe? Who's this guy? Why did he have him on?
You're being so flattering, man. It's like
I'm
I've been
sorry.
at this for like 2-3 weeks, man. It's like I get a shout out from Endeavor. I shoot up 40 subscribers. Like I work hard, man. I
Yeah,
know
you're
my philosophy
just
too.
just the daily grind, my dude.
Yeah.
Uh, but he makes some really good videos explaining just, and it's much more deeper than my surface level, and he does a really good job, and he's very well read and intelligent from what I've talked and from what I've seen in his videos. And I got so interested that I wanted to introduce him to y'all, the people who actually listen to me. Clossington, tell us, the people who don't know, who you are, or I guess what you represent in
What
your
I
channel.
represent. All right, so I'm sort of like the typical disillusioned ex-libertarian. I come from like I back in high school I rejected sort of the boomer like conservative Inc. sort of philosophy of Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro. I knew I could never fit into that. I was drawn to stuff like the Ron Paul 2012 campaign, the Tea Party, but somehow it felt sort of commodified. Like
Mm-hmm.
like who was John McCain's vice president?
Sarah Palin.
Sarah Palin. It's like, come on, she sold out the Tea Party right after it ended. Um, and so I kind of I eventually joined up with the with my like my college libertarian kind of club. I met Ron Paul. I've slowly kind of like ingratiated myself with like Republican Party local politics, and that's the ultimate red pill. No one's in charge. No one's in charge. Everything is regulated. Everything is under your control. So I went kind of full ANCAP to my chagrin. Never go full ANCAP, guys. It's just you don't want to ever be in that sort of mindset.
Yeah,
But
anarchism is gay.
yes, but then I kind of found I found like Mencius Molbug and Nick Land through the Distributist, and now I'm kind of ideologically homeless,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm kind of looking for solid ground. Like I found some solace in sort of like the traditionalists and the paleo conservatives, uh, that sort of general group,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of hard to like wash off the Rothbardian and Hoppian sort of bug once you
Mm-hmm.
go full paleo libertarian. Yeah.
And so you would describe, it's kind of, I mean, I think it's something that I think most people don't even think about. I think one thing I would say is that I think the majority of people in nations, they don't think in terms of ideology. They might, I mean, they have like feelings on matters, but like, they're not like thinking. So they're like, it's, sometimes just, ingrained in like I'm either a Democrat or Republican. And it's just kind of like they don't. They're like what they're called, like low information voters.
Yes.
They just vote based off maybe like ads, like and this is why like Mike Bloomberg, for example, in the Democratic Party is like already like is like in third place because
Oh, that's something of a stretch, man.
yeah,
Like
well,
you've got Bernie, you've got Buttigieg, maybe Amy Klobuchar, then maybe Bloomberg. Who knows? Super Tuesday is going to completely ruin Joe Biden's day.
well, we'll have to. I'm kind of excited. So for me, I've been all over the political spectrum. So I kind of relate to you. I've I actually supported Bernie Sanders in 2016.
Oh no, no,
Yes,
no, man. That's so recent though.
and
It's like
it's
how could you do this to me? It's like I barely know you, and you're like, "Oh, I used to be a Bernie Sanders supporter. I used to be an economic illiterate." And
I
then,
used to, yeah. Well, I had this it's but I think what changed my mind is just the grueling punch of reality, and I kind of gave it was, and I think it came at the right time. Trump came at the right time. Because at the what attracted me to him was obviously the anti-establishment type of thing, but I moved from it was like it was the migrant crisis, it was the Paris attacks, it was then the Cologne sex attacks, and it was then the and then it was like then I looked deeper, like the grooming gang scandals that are happening in England, and just I started reading more and more into it, and I'm gonna be and it just
sounds like a whole lot of hate speech to me.
Yes, I kind of remember. I can't. 2015, 2016 were like the golden years when everyone was there, and then
great meme war, man.
I know that. I feel like it's such an autist thing, like reminiscing about it. Like it feels like I'm like some sort of World War veteran. Like, oh, I remember the days.
Oh man, like, do you still have your like old meme collection? It's kind of cringe, but
they're very out. Like, man, the memes are.
You weren't even like a creator.
Yeah.
You didn't do your part, man.
I remember. No, I made some video. Like, I remember there's some videos that if you look back farther enough in my channel, I made I made a Donald Trump centipede. Remember those Donald Trump centipede video? Those videos like the from Can't Stump the Trump and all that.
Yeah.
Remember he had like 12 13 like videos about Trump just absolutely being a badass, and he had his like main theme was the centipede dubstep thing. So I made like a video of that got a few thousand views. And then I had one like in 2015 of like, of Bernie Sanders. It was like it's kind of like a microcosm of my thought. It was just such a big reminiscing great thing. And when I remember like when Trump got elected, I thought everything was going to change. But as you mentioned earlier, it's people like a lot of people think that like I think this is something that the Bernie people who are supporting him in 2020 are going to feel if he gets the nomination and if he wins, which are two big ifs. If all those things come to true, I think they're going to be radically disappointed in like what what because they think that he's going to get elected and he's actually going to do like actually everything. At best, he'll do like the best he'll do in his first term is like some 80, like some 70% measure on like one piece of his major, platform.
I don't know. I think he'd accelerate sort of the progressive takeover of the Democratic Party. Like you can't really say that there's any sort of intellectual bigwigs within the corporate Democratic sort of establishment. Like they're incredibly unpopular within their party. Like for instance, during the 2016 or right after the 2016 elections, my college Democrats, their club's entire executive board quit and formed their own Democratic Socialist Club, sort of like a Bernie fan club. Basically, like, there's no actual real bite to the Democratic Party. It's too big, and yet they have all of the soft power, so they can afford to kind of be splintered.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and what does Trump actually represent fundamentally? Like he's a populist sort of reaction against whatever sort of the status quo was.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think I think one thing I sometimes debate if it was actually better if Hillary Clinton would have got elected, because then that would have like made people. And not.
Do you want to go like full like accelerationist?
No, I don't want to be gay like that, but but it's I sometimes think because like I mean like listen, it would be one thing if Trump like say like I think actually one red pill that happened or white pill that happened was this recent Supreme Court thing with the public charge rule, and just that by itself would cut immigration by 300,000 according to some estimates. So it's like wow, that's actually something that this is why Trump's elected. But like it'd be one thing if the liberals were getting all pissy and getting more radicalized if like he was actually doing shit, but like he hasn't changed anything in a fundamental way. The demographics of America are still changing. He hasn't actually restored any sort of he's kind of got, if you remember Trump in 2015, he was talking about how the unemployment rate is fake, how and now he's like
he talked
look
his
at
ass off, but we all know that once he actually gets into the White House, some some people who actually know what they're doing are going to sit him down and say, "Shut the fuck up! You can't do anything. You're going to do as we say. You're going to increase the budget. No, no, no. You're going to do more than increase the budget. You're going to blow out the deficit, abandon everything you actually promised,
Mhm.
and maybe just put your thumb against maybe put your thumb against something like the EPA, maybe squeeze them just a little bit, and maybe pull off something like a holding action, a political holding action, and maybe a whole lot of culture jamming on Twitter. But that's
Mhm.
just about all you can hope for.
Yeah, basically all he's kind of done is like he always tries to I think once election season starts becoming in full swing, you'll start seeing Trump becoming more like quote unquote based and all that. You'll start like I was in boot camp
Yeah.
when what was it when the midterms were going around. So like I didn't catch a lot of it. Like I missed the big Kavanaugh thing. That was apparently a big thing, and like I missed the like all these like people running. Um, but I think I remember like a lot of people saying Trump said he was going to like reverse birthright citizenship by executive order, and
that's very optimistic.
like he was gonna he was like dangling that apparently, and then he just never. I'm like yeah, and you know it depends on like it's as he said, it doesn't matter who gets in power. It's and fundamentally like the people in charge aren't gonna change your life. Like a lot of people are trying to like clamor for the
Like, this is like you can't really say you really believe in these like democratic politics after you learn about something like the switch of sort of city management from sort of quasi democratic to I guess managerial during the 1980s and whatnot. Like, do you know anything about Tammany Hall and the 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 partisan sort of bosses who ran cities? Like these
yeah, I
partisan.
especially like in like Chicago and all that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. They were incredibly partisan. They stacked city management positions with their cronies, and it was corrupt as hell, and it was democratic. You had incredible sort of city cohesion. You had incredibly high turnout rates, and then there was something like a progressive push for more managerial, sort of apolitical city management. And
Mm-hmm.
then what you had was the takeover of the bureaucrats. You have something like a, an incredible number of just people who sit there, do nothing but push papers, push beans, and there's very little democratic sort of responsibility if you actually want to if that's actually what you want. But you saw an absolute crash in voter turnout and civilian sort of participation in the
Yeah.
government.
You actually get that they did diversity studies that people actually vote less and they like do like volunteer and everything less when there's more diversity and all that. Um
Well,
it
that's getting down to the sort of bowling alone sort of argument, where
yeah.
if you're not in a community of your kin, you kind of don't care about the community.
Oh yeah. And it's also kind of infected with this I call it radical individualism is basically the idea that you are like it's everything should be centered around individual like is it best for you. And sometimes a lot of people think that everything in the world's like self-interest, like okay, the only reason why we have society is because of you know oh
This is sort of
it's because it's good for me.
egoism.
But like that doesn't explain why people are willing to like suit up for their country like in the past and then just like charge headfirst into the enemy and then like get maybe shot and killed all for maybe a higher calling of their nation or their god, or that it doesn't explain people
Part of
doing
it has
those.
to actually be true. First off,
Mhm.
second off, you have to actually have sort of you sort of have to have a sort of a communitarian civic ethic behind
Mhm.
it. So I care about I'm a British soldier. I care about the British Empire. I'm proud of my home. I'm going to defend my country in World War One, World War Two.
Exactly.
But here you have the rise. Like right now, you have the rise of sort of mercenary soldiers during the sort of this new war on terror. You don't like we're in perpetual wars. We're in the late Roman Empire, man.
Mhm.
Caesarism has kind of taken over. All you have is these sort of cults of personality for presidency, but behind the reality
One
is a
thing,
giant machine that can't be stopped or turned around.
yeah, the Syntax Bunny in the chat call what you were referring to earlier. Says political machines. So like as that's kind of the word you were using, that people just kind of like these big bosses, they come around, they collude with, put their cronies in charge. I think they're called political machines.
Yeah.
And for one thing though, I don't actually see anything wrong with this. I know this is cringe to say because like now the boomers have appropriated it,
Oh
but like
no.
the like the deep state, right? But it's the idea
It's
behind
kind of
it.
true,
It
and
yeah,
it
the
kind of
idea
works.
what happens is that no matter what president goes through, no matter what happens, there is this unelected, unaccounted for bureaucracy. These faceless people, you can't pinpoint one person. It's very hard to, and when you can, it's not like one person controls the whole thing. It's this unaccounted for people in the federal bureaucracy who, no matter who goes in, they're the ones who's running. I think this is the major failing of Trump,
Um,
is that he doesn't know, because he's an outsider. He doesn't actually know anything about Washington. So he kind of came in, stumbled. He has these feelings. He has
but
these,
that's the only kind of person you actually kind of want into the system.
yeah. So because the thing is, yeah. I mean, obviously, but once because he came in but he's like, okay, so he has these instincts. Okay, we're getting ripped off in trade deals, or the immigration's bad, or all these feelings that he had, or these wars we're having are very stupid. He has these ideas, these feelings, but he doesn't know how to actually kind of enforce
No,
it.
no, man. It's not about whether he feels it or not. Even if he was the smartest, most I guess the most organized person in the world, he would
Mm-hmm.
not be able to actually topple this machine. McCarthy was not able to rid Hollywood of or the government of these communists, even though they had infiltrated just about every single level of government and Hollywood. It's like even if he was McCarthy and he did try to actively root out sort of the subversives within his government, he would still face all of the soft power behind, I guess, sort of this atomizing globo homo machine that you can't ever get rid of. Like,
For actually, Elizabeth, I think out of all the Democratic candidates, I'm actually kind of worried about Elizabeth Warren, to be now, not in terms of issues she could, not in terms of if she could win, because she's obviously not going to win. She's a retard. But I think the reason why if she gets elected, she would be very more potent than like a Bernie Sanders, is because I think she understands how the bureaucracy works. She understands that
like
the
she
way.
wrote the what was the book called, the two income trap, about how having multiple parents who work kind of screws over the wages and the housing market,
Yeah, she's being
and
kind of based.
and yes, it's very based and robs kids of sort of parents.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredibly sort of it's exactly the thing that we're in favor of,
Mm-hmm.
but then she kind of just tosses it out the window.
Yeah, it's kind
It's
of
also kind of like how Bernie Sanders was. He notoriously said that open borders is a Koch brothers policy,
mm-hmm.
but then he threw that out of the window
Oh yeah,
because
because he has to
he
appeal
has to
to the
appeal to
minorities. Yep.
not necessarily to minorities, but his sort of new left base.
Yeah.
Like what I've been telling a couple friends of mine is that what we are seeing right now is sort of the reemergence of sort of like the old right as embodied by sort of Trump. It almost made a comeback with the paleo conservatives and Pat Buchanan and the Reform Party or whatever, but now you're seeing sort of like a populist renewal within the right, and you also have something of a populist renewal in the left, sort of a return to form after Reagan absolutely bashed the Democrats' heads in
Mm-hmm.
and sort of curb stomped the old sort of traditional kind of union and blue collar based
Mm-hmm.
Democratic Party that you saw between the 80s and sort of the Clintonites and the
Mm-hmm.
sort of neoliberal kind of types embodied by like Obama and Hillary Clinton. So what do you have now? You have sort of a return to form. We're living in the 60s once again. That's kind of my thesis.
That's interesting. I think what's I think what's happening is that the populations, when in terms of populism, when does left wing populism take hold? When there is some sort of economic catastrophe, like when there is a sort of like when there is like a like Great Depression or something. That is when the government massively started. That's when the Democratic Party took hold, and and they won in landslides. It's because of the Great Depression. Now,
Here's
why?
one of the great ironies of Bernie Sanders. He was against the 2008 bailouts, but he wants
Mhm.
to model himself in FDR's shadow of a new Great New Deal.
Mhm.
So it's he simultaneously wants to expand the government and sort of instead of having giant mega corporations as sort of subsidiaries of the government, indirect arms of the government, he wants to make it more formalistic, which is almost certainly a bigger disaster than what we have right now. But at the same time, he wants them to be responsible.
Mhm.
It's it's kind of a paradox, man. But before the chat or before we started this live stream, we were talking
Mhm.
about how progressives kind of not necessarily progressives, but sort of the global homo types manage to keep such a strict grasp on sort of hard and soft power. I kind of described how you have how the sort of economic populism of the you can have sort of private entities, but they will do what we want,
Mhm.
or we will regulate you into doing what we want you to do.
I
And if you
think
don't, we will take you over. We will bully your industry into obsolescence, or we will absorb the industry.
the biggest thing, the reason why the left wins is because, first, as you mentioned before, they're in control of the major institutions of society, and the
Well,
way they
soft
control
power
the yeah
too.
they control the narrative, and the narrative is what basically, as you said, there has to be a narrative for your civilization, and if your civilization's big crusade is towards more equality, which is a false construct, so you're obviously, when you try to achieve something that's false, you're obviously not going to get it's
I
towards
don't know.
disaster.
I don't
And
know. I heard from it, no, don't give me too much shit for this, but I heard recently Noam Chomsky ask, "Are we actually more equal now than we used to be?" And it's like socially, yes, we have broken down sort of like the male female dichotomy. Yes, we're all kind of all one race, but we're all separate, like ethnicities or whatever.
mhm,
Diversity good, but we're all kind of the noble savage, equal down at heart. But
mhm.
economically, we're more we're even more unequal than usual, and this
It's
has more to do with the private debt, I
mhm.
guess, and
I think
extremely high time preferences.
yeah, for the reason why what's happening is because we've seen an explosion in wealth, and like that's the great thing about
Quote
capitalism, is
unquote,
that it
well,
creates a ton of wealth. But the thing is that a lot of people aren't seeing that in there. And I mean, yeah, you get a cheaper TV, sure, you could get cheaper shit. You could get maybe cheap stuff from China if you want, for cheaper than you would if it wasn't. That's true. You get, in terms of material possessions, we're better off. But I think what the biggest question of our time is, in terms of, isn't like how good we are materially off, which is, but it's it's also it's the social, it's the hole in our hearts where we're trying to fill that sort of.
well, that's Leo Strauss's moderns versus ancients sort of argument. It's like, yes, we are materialistically better off, but are we spiritually as fulfilled as we used to be? No, we're atomized and alone. We have no community.
Exactly.
We're more integrated than ever, but we're more alone than ever. We're schizophrenic. We're autistic. We have all we're like, many of us are spiteful mutants now to go full Edward Dutton. Um, but yeah, something like that.
It's for I think that's actually there's a good a series on YouTube called The Importance of Civil Society. And in my opinion, this is probably, I'm not, I obviously think I think one thing me and you might, I mean, I'm not sure where you would stand on this, but obviously, as you come from a former libertarian background, you obviously have more of a kind of, the government can't do much in terms of like in terms of like solving problems. but I have a lot of faith in that in terms of collective action. Like now, it depends on the people who are running it. Like obviously, if the Swedes, if they the real Swedes, not, but if they collectively wanted to do something, they would be able to do things really efficiently and really well in terms of their state power. Now, obviously, when you have some people who have a room temperature IQ doing it, obviously that wouldn't work out. But I think what a lot of but where I think I kind of mold towards this libertarian is that I would actually prefer that in terms of enforcing those, like say family values, moral values, those religious values, the things that make us whole, the things that between, I don't need, I wish there was we ideally in an ideal world, there would be we are bond to our local community in a sense that we have churches and these clubs and these schools, and we're all more united and that's where we get our fulfilled meaning from. And right now, since we don't have that, we're trying to go towards the state. Now, I think the state needs, because if the state is like actually actively pushing it, either amoral, which is they don't have any sort of more, or even they're promoting like, oh, it's fine to have all these, then that would permeate through society, because the state has a really great effect on what happens in society. But
it's completely taken over.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. They're using
since the creation of sort of the nation state, the national identity has been taken. The maintenance of the national identity has been taken over by, I guess, the nation state. The nation is the representative of the I guess the ethnicity or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you had the emergence of sort of state-run education that harkens this old idea comes back all the way from like ancient Sparta's sort of state-run school system. But I digress. In Mencius Moldbug's essay, I believe it's How Sam Altman Got Pwned. He makes the argument that he makes this thought argument of, have we actually progressed since, or okay, so which would you rather live in, the 1950s or the 2020s? He argues that a normal person would say 2020s because technology, but let's substitute. Let's hypothetically say that you can send out a printout of Wikipedia to the 40s and upgrade the 1950s technologically. Now that these sort of societies have sort of equal technological footing, have we morally progressed? No, we have degenerated. We're more atomized than ever. Yes, we're less likely to be racist, but we right now in the 2020s, we are more likely to be like opioid users. We're more likely to have single mothers. There's more crime. Like you saw this vast wave of crime after the 1960s and through the 80s and through the 90s, and it's only recently come down because men have been so thoroughly feminized.
And then we also incarcerated basically everyone too.
Thanks a lot. Like who would we thank for that? Like Reagan,
Bill Clinton,
Joe Biden.
Yeah, they kind of
enough.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. They the Democrats sometimes I think kind of slip in terms of like they kind of get it, but then they don't. It's like we need to reform the
Bloomberg and being in favor of like stop and frisk.
Yeah, but it's like they say that they're like we're in favor of like we need to reform criminal justice to be so we are not as punitive, so we could save stop incarcerating black people. It's like they can't like they're implying that all the like the people if we're going to be less soft on if we're going to be more soft on criminals, that's a good thing for black people. I mean, that's what they're effectively saying. I mean, it's true, but it's
right, so here's sort of a question I posed to sort of my conservative friends. I put in front of them John Calvin's Geneva, this 16th century Swiss town where every single minor infraction is backed up by the death penalty. So you ended up with a town with zero crime. No one commits crime because you will be weeded out of the gene pool, and over time I guess all of the sort of mental predisposed people who are mentally predisposed to actually commit crime, they're just weeded out of the gene pool. You
Mm-hmm.
have sort of a eugenic sort of effect. But now I guess morality says we can't eugenics people.
Did you see the thing with Richard Dawkins where he says, "Well,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't matter. Okay, yeah, okay, guys, guess what? It's bad. Okay, it's bad, it's bad, but you know, it works." And they're like, "No, you Nazi!" Like, oh my god, you. These people are absolutely. They
No,
can't.
you see the leftists actually start to make moral arguments.
Oh my gosh, yeah, these are the.
It's like yes, in theory, these are the social scientists. These are the people who will manage your lives. But no, it's wrong to manage your sex life because we're libertines.
Basically it's one thing that you what we need to do in terms of the right wing is you what the reason as we mentioned referred to earlier is that the left wing controls um the moral narrative, and basically that's why you get this is why I've always said the mainstream conservatives, they're the progressives of like 10 years ago. And you know, we can see that in like Turning Point USA, and just like, you know, Trump talking about, oh my god, look, I'm so good for homosexuality, when like the Democrats like Hillary Clinton weren't even for it in like 2008 2009, like literally against it.
Do you
And
know what I
so
find absolutely hilarious? In 2015, when Trump was running for office, Charlie
mhm.
Kirk posted a tweet saying, "No, I could never support a president who's been divorced 3 times." And then, like when a Groyper shows up to one of his CPUSA events and asks Charlie Kirk, "Yo, how does homosexuality improve the conservative movement?" He gets offended. He becomes a social libertine again.
Yeah.
It's like brilliant, man, brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and so the reason why there the number one of the number one rules the right wing needs to do, and I think this is why the sort of the meme, the alt-right people who were in 2015 2016, the reason why they
Mhm.
were is because they countered the narrative of, you know, because here's the thing, if you get called racist, that's it, that's like, you know, that's it, you know, but so they have a stranglehold on certain the language, the way you talk, the way you act, the way you, and that's why the, you know, the conservatives who embrace this ideology, that's why they can't say they want to preserve
Well,
American identity
well,
without.
I think you're getting at something a little bit different. The sort of Groyper uprisings and the rise of the alt right in 2015 2016, that is more of just I think they're this sort of dissident right does, I guess, anarchistic sort of tactics much better than sort of the left anarchists ever could imagine.
Mhm.
So you had sort of the anonymity of the internet mixed
Yes.
with sort of culture jamming on absolute steroids. It's
Oh
like
yes.
saying the unspeakable that actually resonates with people. Like I
And
like
it's also the
around,
simplicity of it too, like
yes,
just
like
it's.
around my campus, I've seen like Antifa posters, like actually just posted onto like street posts, and it's like, nah, I'm gonna tear this down. This doesn't resonate with anyone. But the moment you see a "It's okay to be white" poster, and the university absolutely it goes insane. You know, it's
It's because it's those
it's
simple
saying something.
terms. It's
It's
the.
saying something that cannot be said in civil conversation,
Yes.
I guess.
You have to, you have, the number one rule is not to cede moral authority to the left, because if you have the left define the rules, they win. Like that's the game of, if you define, you know, the moral, I guess the moral foundation of your society, and that's just how you make a new narrative. Like this is why I liked Endeavor's work on a new narrative for the right. He made a very good like this huge series on like kind of deconstructing how the Enlightenment, um like all these ideas I've kind of contribute, you know, if we don't, like for example, the idea of like Whig history, I think, is the idea that we're
With
always
historiography.
yeah, that we're always progressing towards something better. Well, you know, if that's the case, then all conservatives are, is that, you know, the progressives take a step
They're
forward,
the bitter clingers.
and yeah, and the conservatives just stay put. But if you stay put, you're a step forward than you were, you know, a few years ago. And you know, now they're talking, you know, now it's transgenders, and now it's you know, it's you know, child drag queens and all that. So it's all these they're always progressing because it's just there's nothing stopping because there's no the conservative, the reactionary, the idea that there are certain standards that you don't, that we possess, that we have to adhere to. There in liberal, in the terms of this modern thing, is that there is no such thing. I mean, there is, but then like we are just trying to deconstruct it because that's like
we're way beyond post-truth, man. Like,
yeah.
we're in full metamodernism. But do you know what I think doesn't help at all?
What?
It's free speech activism. It's making sort of Melian. Okay, so you know the Melian dialogue, right? Like the classic like Athens invades the island of Melos with overwhelming force. The Melians are a severely outnumbered people, or they make moral arguments. They say stuff like the gods will not approve of this. Like people will rise up against your tyranny, and the Athenians say, yeah, no, gods don't care about you. They're not going to save you. No one's going to revolt because we're absolutely in control. The Melians make moral arguments. The Athenians make pragmatic arguments, and that's sort of what we have right now. During the 1960s, the free speech movement was leftists sort of bulking against the establishment. The conservatives held all of the hard power and a significant amount of soft power. So what do the leftists do? They make free speech arguments, and now what do you have? You have hate speech laws, because guess who has both hard and soft power? You see the right making pragmatic arguments. You see the right making moral ones.
Every single battle in almost every battle in politics is a battle of power. It's, the way a lot of people think that because we live in a liberal a lot of people think the reason why we live, like, since we live in a liberal democracy, we're like somehow free from like any government restraints. But the idea is that liberalism needs enforcement mechanisms to stay alive. It needs hate speech laws to make sure dissidents who, if some genocidal person like Merkel wants to invite millions of Syrians and everyone into Germany and replace the population there, then if they want to rise up against that, then you have to like suppress their ideas of that. And so obviously there's like these self-enforcing mechanisms within liberalism to stay alive. It's not, a lot of people think that the reason why, just because we live in a they think they're so enlightened, but like, just like, for example, in a conservative society, in a reactionary society, there'd be laws against degeneracy and such like that.
These are just this is just the cathedral burning out heretics.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same language, and people in the UK will see this exactly in how sort of Tony Blair flipped heresy laws into anti-hate speech laws. It's almost too out there. I mean, I don't mean like it's out of your sort of mental faculties. It's more like it's just so obvious. It's like, yes, blaspheme against the LGBT church, and you will be tarred and feathered. It's like it's like, come on, guys, can you be more obvious? And then you have sort of the social justice crowd deny that these are sort of witch hunts. And they are, plus anonymity, plus mass communications.
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing with how the right wing is using, as you mentioned earlier, the left wing was trying to use free, because the main view of them is trying to deconstruct kind of things that put people in place. And I think the reason why they've deconstructed, that's why we feel a loss. We don't feel like we are part of something, because it's like, oh well, if a woman's role is to be a mother, then that's oppressive to her.
No, it's deconstructing the insider and embracing the outsider. It's out group preference plus deconstructivism.
Yeah, and for and it's what they're trying to. It's
for now.
Yeah, the alternative hypothesis. He actually made a video about, like, if you're against immigration, or I mean, if you're for immigration, or if you're against immigration control, like if you're just for open borders and all that, you're not actually like some sort of open-minded. You're just a stooge for like Mexican nationalism or Chinese nationalism. When Mexicans and Chinese people come to America, they're not becoming the same thing. They have their own group preferences that they're asserting, and you're just being a stooge and letting them continue on. And so it's like these so in terms of
Well, I think this gets into sort of the progressive antinatalism sort of ethos. It's like, okay, so these types who are pro-abortion and pro, I guess, not explicitly, but de facto pro single motherhood, pro sexual liberation. It's like they're fine, sort of dying out, but I'm not. And they kind of fixed their economic destiny and their pensions to my work, and they're antinatal, so they're going to shoot themselves in the head, like kind of literally, because with transgenderism and with suicidal tendencies, my borderline personality disorders, and it's like I don't want these people kind of they've completely unhinged everything. They've flipped the script. They're depressed. They're alone. They're atomized. They sit at home watching Netflix with their cats, and then they just consume, and then they let the outsider take over, because
yeah
who the hell else is going to? It's
it,
either you see like Eric and Brett Weinstein say, no, you can't push social justice too far, or the right wingers will eventually like rise up. And it's like you're going SJWs and the speed limit. Aren't you the guys who got like tarred and feathered at Evergreen State for being in favor of biology? It's like, guys, what are you doing? So come to our side. I don't even know what my side represents, but we're against whatever this nonsense is. Yeah, that's my tangent, I guess.
yeah I think I think what you're getting for in terms of the left wing, I think they're feeling, I mean, they're human beings as well, and they feel the same thing. They don't have a sense of like, they're feeling the same thing we're feeling, and I think their reaction is trying to like in like we're going to be a because they know in a way the system is screwed or fucked up, and that's why they're like, okay, we're going to do it through a political revolution, and we're going to go. That's why they're like supporting Sanders. And I think that's they're saying maybe if we just have the right guy there, and if he and everything goes, he'll be able to actually change our lives for the better. One thing I'll say about Trump,
it's worse than that, though. Like to quote Sam Hyde, it's like when we win, do not forget that these people want you broke, dead, and your kids raped and brainwashed, and they think it's funny. It's like they're not satisfied with simple suicide or wallowing in their own despair. I don't think these social justice warriors online actually care about you. They don't care about you. They care about the outsider, and they will brainwash your kids. They already are. They man, it's so far gone, and it's hard not to go full black pilled.
Yeah. As someone who was left wing, the way I saw it, at least when I was a Bernie supporter, is almost like the white man's burden. It's like it's my job to make sure that everyone is, I mean, it's like not everyone. There's obviously, I think it's a conflict of values. The reason why no one will ever come to an agreement there will never be like complete bipartisanship is because people are politics is essentially, philosophy at its core. And when you, like, for example, the way I describe it is, for example, healthcare. If you believe
you're thinking in Enlightenment terms, man, you're thinking you have the fundamental Hegelian split of civil society and government politics, but you're dude, it's all integrated. It's all integrated. The feminists were right when they proclaimed was their screed. It's like everything is political. It's like, yes, to one degree or another, you can be in your sort of community, but and sort of ignore it because you can afford to, but everything is kind of political, and everything is being fought over, and the government will trample over just about everything you do. Like everything in front of you who like audience who's just watching me on some screen, everything has been regulated. The from the materials, the oil made that's used to make the plastics, the mining, the metals you made like mined, the transportation of these things, everything, infrastructure, very thoroughly integrated within the government machine. And these and within this sort of Hegelian concept of the government, there's the soft power that is anti-natalist and is trying to kill itself. And I don't think thinking, hey, these people want something. No. They don't want anything. They have this anarchistic enlightenment and ontology that I don't think you can fix with just saying like they have good intentions. No, they have bad intentions, and
Well,
I don't
the
want to
way
with it.
I think, like, for example, I think me and you would agree. Like, if we were, this is a big part of my channel, is that the idea of identitarianism and the obviously the idea being like, for example, if the Norwegians were replaced by Somalis, that would be an act of genocide, and that's a horrible thing because the peoples of the world are different and they have a right to exist in their own nation states that express their unique identity. And when we see that Norwegians are getting replaced, we see that as a horrible thing. But the presumption is that they have a right to their own state. What if you take someone who doesn't believe in that core fundamental bedrock value? Well, then they're like, well, who cares if Norwegians, we're just economic units, or we're all the same, nothing in it, who cares about skin color or whatever? Then if you have that towards types of worldview, then obviously, it's like, why are all these people mad that, like, who cares if Norwegians are the majority in Norway? Who cares? So that's it's in terms of the reason why it's kind of hard to, I guess, look at the other side. I know there's probably like looking at the other side, and because it's very hard to, because when they see us, they're like, well, they're just crazy. Like, why would you? They just see us as crazy racists. That's why they can't make headway, because they see us as evil. They see us as we're here to like throw all the black people into slave labor, and we're gonna throw all the Mexicans out, and we're gonna prison all the homosexuals. And it's like they just don't. They're like, well, we believe in freedom, and okay, so that's the fundamental value, and you don't, and you don't believe in that people should be able to do what you want. And when you say no, it's like you don't buy into their. So they see us.
No. Dude, like freedom, man. It's not about freedom. That
Well, no, I was just making a.
yeah. But to sort of combat sort of the Buckleyite sort of it's not paradigm. But the sort of Buckleyite narrative of let's maximize freedom, let's maximize capitalism. No, that's an empty ideology that will be filled with just about any sort of it's a vacuum. Freedom means nothing. Like radical Sartrean freedom means nothing until you actually fill it with a positivist philosophy. And what's that positivist philosophy? It's like, yes, you say you're identitarian, but what's the identity that you want to fill the vacuum with? Some sort of like Christian sort of ethos, or some sort of like Christian conception of the world mixed with sort of a sort of an ethno-nationalist kind of worldview? Is that what you're getting at? Or are you getting at something more like a localized communitarian sort of, I like my parks, or like going back to like Russell Kirk, sort of, I like my parks, I like my local buildings, I like my community. Like what are you going for?
Well, it's the sense of, obviously it's the sense that I think most right, it would be called conservation. It's I like, when I visit Poland, I want to experience the Polish way of life. This is what what makes a nation a nation. Its DNA is, it's the people, it's the ethnicity, it's the culture, it's the language, et cetera, et cetera. And, there's all these different factors to go into it. But if you change it, you fundamentally change what that nation is about. The idea being is that, like, for example, you can't just take a monkey, put it in a horse stable, and then if it's raised in a stable, call it a horse. That makes no sense.
Not.
Yeah. But so it's for me, it's just it's the, what's the right word? Like a very fancy word for it. Like, it's just self-evident that a Polish nation would be filled with, have to be majority Polish who speak Polish, who celebrate the Polish way of life, and that is different fundamentally from a Russian way of life or a Japanese way of life. And so the idea of that being is that the what the strive towards that is, well, if I'm a Polish nationalist, if I'm not Polish, but like, if I was, if I was a Polish identitarian, I want to preserve what makes Poland Poland. And if in terms of it, because as you said, you kind of listed, it's a communitarian, and I'm not just an atomized individual. I am Polish, and that entails all these types of different things.
I think you need something just a little bit more than that, something more local, because like I said in one of my better videos, before the French Revolution, people who identified as French were only the people immediately around Paris. You had your local identity that was eventually subsumed by the super organ of the nation state. I want to get back to something a little bit more traditionalist, a little bit more localist. But yes, obviously Poland, good idea. I like the idea.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and basically, yeah, I mean, it's almost like, the state is such a simple statement. It makes so intuitive sense, like Poland for the Poles. I mean, that just makes. I mean, you have to be an idiotic moron to be like, well, actually, anyone can be Polish. It's like, for example, saying like, like my white ass can be Japanese. It doesn't matter if I was born in Japan. If I spoke Japanese, I would always be seen as, okay, maybe I have Japanese citizenship, maybe. But like, that doesn't make me Japanese. And obviously, I think when it comes down to it, there's the fundamental building block is the family unit, and then from that is the small community. Obviously, there's different flavors of German, for example, but and then at the more and then from your community stems the nation, and then there's like this kind of hierarchy of
Yeah. I mean, in terms of hierarchy of immediate concern, I care about. Okay, so I think something like the most valuable thing is something like the highest ideal, sort of God, the aesthetic, the logos, whatever, and then your nuclear family, then extended family, then community, then nation, then humanity, I guess, and all the while you have, I guess, sort of institutions representing each, not necessarily interconnected. My problem is that these have all been kind of streamlined into government and might as well be a subsidiary of the government sort of institutions. And by the way, getting on to sort of the Polish for the Poles, do you remember who coined the term the Great Replacement?
It was a French philosopher.
Yes, his name is Jean-Renaud Camus, I believe.
Yeah.
In one of I think it's one of Daughter of Albion's videos, she showed a clip of Camus saying racism is beyond people being replaced ethnically. It's more like male can be exchanged for a female, young for old, white for black, what have you. We're all interchangeable. We're just machine parts. We're units of utility in a gigantic machine. And I think we're both kind of bulking against this sort of global homo sort of ethos that I don't it's hard saying exactly what we're fighting, but we're fighting for, I guess, a world that reflects what we are, and not something like
where it's everything's the same. It's like you could be a woman and a man, or you could be a Polish and Japanese.
A great example of this is sort of like Paris versus Los Angeles. It's like if you go to Paris, there's a very distinctive architecture, right? It's a very specific roof height. It's all very it's packed relative to New York. The population density is much more packed. It's all very organized. It has a very specific aesthetic. But then you go to LA and all of the buildings look different. My individuality just means that Los Angeles buildings don't really belong anywhere. They're just blocks of utility and individuals expressing themselves however they would like.
Mhm.
whatever the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There's no unifying aesthetic. It's
Mhm.
all just relative to, I guess, all of these different blocks. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily productive or sort of cohesive to what individuals really need. People like to go to Paris because there's an aesthetic to it. It
Mhm.
makes you feel like you belong there. It's
Yeah.
something unique. And if you go and see like skyscrapers in LA or Chicago or New York, you, these buildings could be built anywhere, but nowhere else will you go to see like Paris or Venice
Yeah. There's a
or like
certain
Rome.
yeah, there's a certain like as you said there the what makes Paris Paris is the atmosphere that it entails and the people there, the cult, the things that you get from it. And this
It's
is
all
and
integrated too,
yeah,
and that's kind of what really matters. It's all integrated,
yes.
and within this sort of framework, who really cares like if the people in the buildings are selling flowers or baked goods or whatever. You can have a free market within that framework, but at this sort of aesthetic and organizational level, you have to have some coherence, but
Oh yeah.
within sort of I guess not necessarily American, but more just like modernist and postmodernist sort of constructed sort of like sort of like city construction. You have schizophrenia. You have schizophrenia.
Mhm. I think also what you were mentioning earlier as well is what are exactly so we know we're everything's interchangeable. That this is a big problem that we're all somehow
That's the problem.
yeah, is the problem. And the big and it's like what's the right wing or what's the solution. The solution I say is the objective, the essentialism, as I call it. What I mean by that is what makes there's a certain properties to there's certain objective moral values. There's objective an objective way of like what makes a man is the DNA. What makes a woman is this. What makes
No, it's beyond that. It's more than just DNA. It's also the role you embody.
well, yeah, no,
It's
no,
it's
yeah.
it's the
Like there's certain
logos
like there's
and
like
the
yeah.
ethos.
I was just yeah no exactly I was just saying that like what makes a woman could do what a man could do, a man could do what a woman could do, for example. It's like no, if you're a woman, there is a certain there's a certain like sacred roles that we that you could take I guess that fit in with the natural world. Like what I think with this postmodern world is that it's trying to rebel against human nature and trying to like just that's why they need like certain language like like political correctness because you can't they need like a certain like way to make you not think in terms of like oh you need to have implicit bias training because you think that when you go down a black neighborhood you have to be more on watch than if you go down like a white neighborhood in like so that's just a natural human thing. You have an instinct. There's a certain and I think it's like the main what we're fighting for is taking the natural what the nature of man, the what makes our human nature, and devising a system that tames it in a way that that is in harmony with it, but like doesn't allow us to that but makes us into instead of rebelling against human nature. We have these institutions of society from the family, the church, the nation that not mold us, but puts us in places that make us better as individuals. And that I think is where we get the best, fulfillment. That's where we'll find our fulfillment. And in a way, it'll make us feel more free because we know what we are. And
It's
it's
like,
not
are you really free if you're a slave to your own desires and your more animalistic impulses?
yeah.
It's like you can say something like Nietzschean will to power, but then what are you actually left with? You're alone. You're a beautiful skyscraper. You're a beautiful individual skyscraper that doesn't really fit anywhere. And that's what I think the tragedy of sort of this incredible economic prosperity that comes to absolutely nothing. Like that's what I think the shame of everything
And
is.
that's another thing. Like we have all this wealth that's getting created, right? We're a lot of people say we're getting better off with more stuff, but like, what is it for? Like, what are we exactly? We're all gonna be dead and gone, eventually. And what are we leaving to? In term when I talk to Orwell and Good,
Mhm.
what me and him would talk about in his book, which is having high time preferences. That being the idea that when you think in terms of long term thinking, that is how. And I mentioned this in my nihilism. The biggest thing that got me out of nihilism is having a focal point that you're fighting towards.
All
And
right. So
and
to sort of go on my sort of like Nietzschean tirade, Nietzsche's answer was culture, sort of like to the death of God and the death of sort of these transcendent values. It's culture turning to the self. But I'm not sure how well that kind of philosophy actually works.
yeah. um I think for Nietzsche, I for I think what one thing I get from Nietzsche is in his will to power is that I think he's describing something that we could kind of relate to in the modern world, is the sense that we killed God because of our, we're like, we deconstructed God, so there's not some sort of like grandiose grand vision of the universe. It's just us, we're here in the here and now. How do we live? How do we mold our lives? And the man that rises above and creates, um like, who rises up, above that nihilism, is
The Übermensch.
yeah, is someone who actually like becomes a greater man because he figured out a way to live life without those transcendent values. But I think what happens is that we're kind of stuck. We deconstructed everything, we killed everything, and now we're just in a field of death with nowhere to go. And the purpose of, like, we have to answer, like, what's the purpose of our society? It's the purpose of our civilization. And I don't think we have these, as when me and Orwell were talking, it's we are all short-sighted, and everything, all that matters is me. All that matters is the next high, whatever makes the next buck. The politicians work for the elections, the businesses work for the quarterly report. And no one actually thinks in terms of, like, what's going to happen in 50 years. I think that's why the Chinese are going to outbeat the Americans. And
That's because they're absolutely ruthless and they understand the game.
oh yeah, and they think in terms of like 40 years. They're like, look, we're going to be like their Belt and Road Initiative, where they're trying to reorient the
Mhm.
world away from America towards China. Like, obviously, this is going to take decades. And I talked to this with I think with Endeavor and Orwell. What we're fighting for isn't going to just happen overnight. Like, we can't just we'll elect the right person or something. It's going to take decades to, like, because things that are the hardest fought for are the things that are most worth. And it's this, when we think about what we're fighting for in terms of civilization, you have to, it's like, we're bringing it to our descendants. It's not because we're going to be dead in a few decades. And so all this we built, all this wealth because at the end of the day, when you're at your deathbed, you're not going to think about all the money you try to catch, all the girls you had sex with or whatever. It's going to be the people on your side, your family, what you gave to a grander purpose, what you created, what you made for, what did you give to your community? And that's, if you look at throughout history, and one thing I say about, like, for women, for example, is that a lot of people are like, oh, why don't you see a lot of women in history? It's because they were too busy making the future. The future, what we're building for is a future for our kind, and this is for everyone. There are, we're preserving our society for them. And if
I
we're
mean,
not
I think that gets back to sort of like first principles. What actually matters beyond sort of immediate consumption and gratification.
yeah.
And I'd say something like, okay, so first off, beauty, aesthetics, filling yourself with a world made out of beautiful things, not necessarily useful, but something that makes you both comfortable and sort of wraps you around a meta narrative that you feel comfortable in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in a community of my peers. We are working for our own survival and for the survival of our kids. And we know that that what we have now will be passed down onto them. But you have these anti-natalist types that just don't get it, either because economically we kind of can't, and politically we're not structured to actually have any sort of real long-term thinking. And that gets into something like praxis. What kind of form of government and economy do we actually want to have a low time preference sort of system? And what are your kind of like policy proposals for that sort of thing?
Oh, in terms of like the way we
Yeah.
oh
Just putting you on the spot a little bit, but
yeah.
hey, you're the host.
Well,
I'm
so like
interrogating.
what I would like do to like make sure we kind of reorient our society towards that having those sort of like thinking those long-term goals. Well, first I would have well, because what happens is the biggest where man comes in from what the role of the okay, how do I phrase this? The purpose of the government is to preserve the institutions from that make man from from this animalistic this because we're animals and we have these instincts where human nature is what it is, and when they and it sets so the first thing I actually made a list of stuff I would do. I'm making something called the National Conservative Manifesto. I kind of listed a few things. The thing I said is in terms of policy proposals, the first thing would be having some sort of an objective moral order to the society, something that because every society has it. It's just the matter of what are the right values that you want to put into your kids, and what you do that matters. If you look at the Japanese in World War II, this is an extreme example, but they were willing to they had their moral order that the government was imposing in terms of in schools and throughout the institutions of society is you're loyal to your emperor, to the country, and your main purpose is to help. That's why they were if they would rather die than surrender. And so that's why you had that by the Japanese, and you don't get that from Americans. Or there's a reason why Americans might be. So there's an objective moral. I don't know what exact something that the government will do in terms of a specific, but there has to be an objective moral order that because if you don't have a firm foundation, that makes it something that makes us as better individuals, that makes us as a better society. If there's not all we are, and basically what this means is that something that we strive towards, because if you don't have a firm foundation, the house of the nation would, no matter how great it is, what's made out of, who's in it, whatever, will crumble.
So I'm gonna make like a quick policy proposal real quick, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, no, bro.
What do you think about monarchism?
Monarchism?
Yeah,
I mean,
like having sort of a family with a patriarch who will pass down the property of the kingdom to a successor one day. Does it not encourage low time preferences?
Funny you mention that. So when I was, the game Nation States.
Yeah,
it's like you could create your own nation. You react to situations that are kind of crazy, and they kind of rate your country based. I actually made a nation a few years ago, and I made like 2 or 3 years ago. But it but I made a thing about writing like the constitution of the like what would be the hold on just a second. The way I structured it was kind of like not an absolute monarchy. The way I did it, I was trying to balance it between an absolute monarch and kind of having a way. It's kind of like a mix of a technocratic government with.
Come on!
But
you're letting scientism into your government.
No, so the way what would work is that the king would be there's like these like advisory departments in this, so the executive would be really strong. It'd be like there would be a king and he's there, but he's advised by, and the way this would work, there's like a minister of, let's I need to get back to my nation state. I haven't logged into it for a while, but
Dude, you're like living AOL. Like I'm playing like Total War games, man. Like, how far behind are you?
Yeah. Well, I actually play Total War games as well. I really love Empire, to be quite honest. Yeah. That's what I'm in. But the way I do it for but it's like, for example, let's say the minister of what would happen? Let's choose, I don't know, the minister of internal security or something. So this person's in charge of combating crime and such like that. And what would happen is that the person would what would happen is, there's like this like 10-year process. So at the end of your schooling system, the top 10% would be selected to choose to go into one of these departments. And and then there's like this 10-year program where they're basically the best of the best. They weed out, it gets the basics at first, and again it gets tougher and tougher and tougher until like the top, the most elite, the most people who do the best in that field, they're the ones who rise to the top. And then the king personally selects these, administrators to head one of these departments, because they wouldn't be more knowledge, because a single person can't know everything about, maybe they might know about structure. So what this would do is have have a central father figure for the nation that, as you mentioned, but it would be advised by these technocrats who would help make sure the best and brightest are actually running the society as well. I also believe there should be like some sort of way that the people have a way where the monarch can't be completely tyrannical. So there's like maybe some sort of like a weak parliament that
come on, you're handing it over to democracy now.
Well, how would your monarchy work?
Dude, there are multiple times when sort of these absolute monarchies give sort of get input from sort of the the demos. Like who's the most famous like Russian empress? What was her name? Catherine the Great. Yeah, she once asked every single sort of demographic to send representatives to her, and what they did was they crowned her with the title the Great, and didn't actually make any policy positions. That's like, dude, come on. I don't really care about how. I don't actually care about how you structure your cabinet. All I actually care about is are the people who actually have the keys to power incentivized to actually wield power with low time preferences, and are they encouraged to develop their human capital and hard capital? Now, I'm in favor of much more of something like a neo-cameral sort of patchwork state, right? Or, like, are you familiar with sort of
can you explain what? Oh,
yeah.
Can you explain what a neo-cameral version would look like?
So this is one of Mencius Mollbug's ideas of having sort of a joint stock company as a sovereign corporation state. It's essentially who you trade sovereign. You trade. All right, so this joint stock corporation is the government. It is the sovereign, and it has electors who are shareholders of said sovereign nation. They can elect whoever they want to be as leaders and whoever they want to be cabinet. But ultimately, will the investors actually want to make smart long-term decisions, or will they want to waste away at their capital? Like, I think in the long run, something like that would be a little bit better
it would look something like the Holy Roman Empire would back in the day, because that's effectively what the Holy Roman Empire was. It was the like the 4 or 5 largest electors electing an emperor, and the local lords kind of could do the rest for themselves. It was only after sort of the rise of nationalism and sort of these massive nation states like Napoleonic France that came in and smashed their sort of decentralized nations, or not nations, like kingdoms, duchies, bishoprics. They all got smashed by sort of collectivism. I want to devolve the power of the state back to sort of localities, and to once again wed people to their land, provide sort of this economic sort of integration of people with their community. That's ultimately what I want. I want people to feel like they're invested in some meta narrative. And how else do you do that but sort of wed the people who ultimately have local power to the fate of their nation? So
I think
those.
Yeah, I think I'm also very sympathetic to that. But I think also, there's like what I think at the end of the day, it's the local, because everything you do mostly is in the local sphere of influence. But I think also, because what you do most of your life, your family, your job, all these things, those are all what in terms of any clubs you do or whatever, everything, all that's done in the local level. And in fact, most of the things that are most important are done at the local level. And so when you do that, but I think also, while acknowledging that, there should also be like a, we're, I might be in Denmark, and I might live in the city of Arthus, or however the hell you spell. I can't speak Danish, but I have this community, of maybe a few thousand Danish people that I know, not know, but like just I live with, and maybe there's a few million Danes out in this little place of Denmark, but most of the stuff is done at the local level. But I think there's also this like strong, like a Danish national government that unites the Danish people and preserves that, what makes me, what makes, the people of the people of Denmark and Arthas, they might live their own local lives, and they live, and they make, and everything. But I think there's like some sort of like thing that connects, unites them all, if you know what I mean.
Like what I'm mainly concerned about is making power known, making who actually wields electoral power known. This is sort of Mulbug's concept of formalism, right? It's like, okay, so who actually, like, the electorate is so massive and so kind of apathetic and easily swayed that you can actually never point to anyone for any sort of real control. But if you have, like, I'm talking more about like going back to more what I want out of a government than, say, like my grand worldview. But ideally, you want to have both. You want to know who's in control. Who actually runs things in the United States right now? Here's a good question. Who actually runs things? Does Trump run anything? Does Congress?
Well, definitely not.
It's like, does the Supreme Court? It's like, no. It's like, do the people run anything? It's like, no. No. It's like, you can look to your local and like your city municipal codes, your state codes, and you can see the thousands upon thousands of regulations that you're under. But who's actually responsible for that? It's like no one. It's like these managerial cities where we have city councilmen who are elected, who are there for like 4 or 6 years max. It's like, can anyone really be responsible for that? It's like, no. I want something hierarchical where I know what the hierarchy is and it's well known. I want power to be out in the open. I want to know who the electors are and what their stakes are. It's like this current sort of democratic system it's not honest. It's like, okay, so
everybody has freedom, right? And everybody has power, but so little, and it's so abstract, you can't really put your finger on it. You don't know where you stand. You don't know who you are or what you are because I put on so many different hats. I play so many different video games. I embody so many different bodies. I can pretend whoever I can pretend to be whoever I want to be online, and it doesn't make you whole. And I want to get back to something that you can actually see, some state where you have real authority, and not at all. I mean like authority. I mean when you have real stakes, when you can actually point to someone and say, "This elector screwed me over," and when the elector can say, "I'm losing money and I'm losing my property, I'm losing my livelihood because I instigated this parasitic sort of policy that infects the people." That's the way I see politics, I guess.
I think one thing I would also prefer is, in terms of localism, is people live. When they go to their job or when they live their lives, they're not think. A lot of people don't think about who's running. There's people out there. There's grander forces at play, and what I think what a great man does is he might not know who is exactly in charge, and obviously I sympathize with we need some sort of, like, people need to be more, because right now we people think they're in charge, but they're not. But I think it's, when you go to your, if you're a farm, someone who runs a farm, and you make your own way, you make your own, you're an independent man, you make your own things. You don't really, you're all you care about is how do you say, you're more you have these sort of local issues, and you don't really care about
The grand narrative.
yeah, they're like, I don't care if
more romantic, epic sort of things.
it's like, I don't really care about who's in if it's a king or it's the president. I'm just here to work. Or I'm just but what who's in charge of those things is kind of embodies kind of the if it embodies kind of the values that, because as we said, we said this throughout the show, we're not just atomized individuals. The society molds us in a way. Not molds us, that's not the right term. It's like they make us, kind of makes us a part of our identity. So like,
there's a sort of the Heideggerian phenomenological sort of thrownness about life. You don't just exist as an isolated being who's just sort of an agent. You're thrown into the world naked and afraid, and then you have something like Heideggerian sort of or not Heideggerian, Hegelian sort of ideals of how the individual is constructed internally in terms of identity through sort of master slave dialectics. And I don't know, I'm starting to like go off onto a little tangent, but I think we're a lot more constructed, but we should ideally be constructed to be ingrained into some sort of great story. I like
definitely.
Like and I don't see many people concerned about their story.
Oh yeah, they it's the biggest, as we mentioned before, it's the biggest thing is having that civilizational narrative that creates those high time preferences. And you have to what does our civilization exist, or what do I exist for? Why am I here? It's these basic philosophical questions. And what the purpose of the nation is, or the purpose of state, is creating these institutions that perfect the human, because there's a difference between the leftist narrative of trying to change human nature, which is a rebellion against human nature. It's trying to change who we are, like, at a fundamental level. And the right-wing version, which is trying to make it where we take human nature and we mold the society around it, where in a way we make that individual into a more perfect, into a more better in terms of morally, culturally, in terms of those high ideals, because that's the objective. There's objective beauty, there's objective morals, there's
Yeah.
something that makes an essential, and that's the big fight that we're fighting for. And
As sort of a throwback to my old libertarian days, one of Murray Rothbard's books is ironically called "Egalitarianism is a Revolt Against Human Nature."
oh,
But it's yeah, it's cool. Yeah. So where do we want to go from here?
well, I feel like we like I've never really had these types of conversations before where you're like
Yeah.
we just kind of move from like very like, it's not like, okay, we end the topic and then we move on to like, it's like this entire time we've kind of just been, I kind of like it. It's very fluid. I like it.
Yeah. So how are you?
Well, swamped
Like-
with shit.
I feel you, man. Like yeah. Like one of my hobbies is kind of woodworking, you know. It's like I woodwork, I do a little, I paint my Warhammer 40K minis. I code, I learned how to animate recently.
Oh,
You know,
that's
I
pretty cool.
love reading my my history books, whatever.
Yeah, you're very well read.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. But no, I'm the dumbest person you will ever meet. Somehow I fail upwards, you know. and yeah.
What got you into like this I guess like what got you into, because most people aren't political junkies, like, you know, most people probably don't even, they like, oh, okay, Trump's in power, and they probably can't even mention like even like the basic functions of like the current ways of governance, let alone like an alternative, like, you know, version. So like what got, you know, there just has to be, you know, most people are just kind of live in the way their society is, and they just like, oh, I guess this guy's in charge, and oh, maybe he did. You can name like one or two things, you know, but like you can't even, they don't know grander narrative, and you know, or big, you know, bigger or alternative ideas, and
Like,
you know, so
you have to be just a little bit autistic to sort of get into professional sort of formalistic theory, I guess. It takes a very, very specific kind of person to get into this. Like in one of my in my video on the libertarian to alt-right pipeline, I said like most conservatives are fine just subsisting on SJW cringe. Like I'm not that kind of person. I need more than just Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman and worshiping Reagan. I need to actually, like, I dug into these things, and I dug deeper. I found after going to Cato Institute, I found the Mises Institute, and through Mises you find Rothbard and Hoppe. Hoppe radicalizes the hell out of you from through Democracy, the God That Failed, and it's just these pipelines, I guess. If you're curious and you actually want to find something deeper, you'll find it. You'll find people who are like you, kind of spontaneously, and I guess that's just the way I do things, the way I go about life.
it's yeah, you, as you say, you have to be kind of autistic to actually understand the way the world, because you know, most people don't think about, you know, people just kind of know in their gut feeling about certain issues. They're like, oh, I kind of feel like I'm feeling like a stranger in my own country. I want to, you know, they don't know, they might not know the philosophical, you know, stuff about it. They might not know, you know, the moral case for it. They just have gut feelings, and they have certain intuitions that are going on, and they're like, well, I kind of feel like I need to do this. And that's kind of like how and so, but you know, you have to actually be, you know, because most people don't, and you also have to have like probably time on your hands too, you know. It you know,
I have
time. I've got no free time, man. Like engineering school is rough.
I can't even imagine. But once we have our own white ethno state, I'm kidding. But you'll be the minister of engineering or whatever.
No, I don't want to. Like I've seen a couple. Like I've bumped into a couple U.S. Secretary of Transportation people. Like I've bumped into like Elaine Chao and Obama's former like Secretary of State or Secretary of Transportation. They both have deep lines on their foreheads, and I'm not quite. I don't want to mess up my face too much. Yeah. Do we want to address Mr. Five's question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I was gonna. I didn't know where. Yeah. So, guys, can I ask what you think about non-human species have give next to no focus to money or ownership?
You mean like is this sort of like a Peter Singer sort of argument in favor of expanding egalitarianism to sort of non-human species, or is this just like a animals don't have money, are they better off kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm kind of confused on the question. I'm gonna try to interpret it. Let's see. I'm like trying to decipher Egyptian hieroglyphics here.
Just squint at it, and long enough, you'll find it.
Yeah,
it'll start making sense. I think it's we're human beings. We're capable of abstracting a hell of a lot more than the non-human species.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can understand the concept of money. Can you? Like I can understand the concept of property being an extension of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's just this ability to abstract that differentiates us from
it's that definitely. It's also one thing that kind of puts the nail in the coffin of progressivism is if you look at our closest ancestors in the the tree of life and whatever, it's like the great apes. If you study them, they exhibit a lot of the same sort of natural instincts that we do, and so you understand this is just something that's hardwired into our DNA. It just like, for example, like let me just drop a philosophical question here. It's like, why even talk about grander why talk about like say political science? Like why talk about these types of forms of government at all? Why? I'm taking a political science class, and my teacher. You would think, okay, here's the weird thing. I'm taking a poli sci class. I'm taking a poli sci class and a business class, but the business class has the liberal professor. My poli sci class actually has the like a right wing. He's kind of like a boomer. Not a boomer. He's actually pretty young. He's not a boomer. He's like 40 or something. But like but he's actually like like a regular. But he the way he describes is that the purpose of is what is the good and how do we achieve it? That's the definition of like what the purpose of. And so like, why do we do that? Like what's because we could construct good. We could construct what it means to, and then how do we attain, we could theorize about certain ways to go towards those types of goals. And so I think that's kind of, because fundamentally is like, what are we fighting for? What is, like, obviously we talk a lot about what we're fighting against, which is this current rot in our in our society. But like, at the end of the day, what are we trying to we're like, what is actually our alternative? What is our way of what we're seeing in life? Like, what are we seeing in
like I think you're getting at something like the concept of the mirror stage. This recognition of our humanity beyond ourselves and sort of a self-consciousness that animals are not really capable of. It's we're able to identify something special, so something deeply romantic with a capital R about ourselves and the nature of what we are. We are. I think it was Gene Roddenberry who said something like we have like deep roots that connect us to the earth, but our heads are so high we reach the heavens.
That's a very good.
And it's very, very romantic, and it's very, I guess, it's very positive.
One thing. Oh yeah, no. The way I describe it is, we even if you buy into the like kind of like you don't believe there's an objective, say, moral values or an objective meaning to life. You think that if an meteor hit Earth and we all died, what the universe would just keep on spinning. And I mean, if you don't believe in a higher being, then that's basically true. But that doesn't mean you live like that. What makes meaning, what makes morals, is because of us being human, our humanity, our higher ideals, our higher thought processes. These are what create our meaning. It doesn't matter like if my meaning, what I find that fulfills my soul. Does that matter if it doesn't matter in an objective sense? No, we create it. So we create the good, we create the meaning, we create all these things. So
you're going into like Albert Camus' Myth of Sisyphus. It's like, man, I don't want to just push boulders up a hill. I want to build something for my kids. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's just the so it's just this, we create these types of, so even if you believe in like there's no moral, objective morality or whatever, well, you don't act like there is no objective morality. Like, someone tried to make some, oh, you can't be a moral nihilist and express moral outrage, but that's just impossible. Everyone will always, scream moral outrage. The types of people who are so, like who are kind of, oh, nothing really matters, is all relative. The same people are like, oh my God, they're same people who present. That's why this is the liberal worldview, is the objective worldview that they adopt. They think they're like being high minded, and like they think everything's not objective, but you can't express that different racial groups have different outcomes, because that would be blasphemous against the idea that we're all equal. It's just like some sort of cult in the United States, at least, because besides freedom, what's like the number second like biggest thing? Like equality. So like if you talk about like something that's against or even like hell, even if you go against like freedom, like what, being free might not be the best thing. Having as speaking as someone who had like, so I had this like 6-month period in like 2019 where I had no responsibilities whatsoever. I had no job. I had no college I was going to. My parents paid for everything. And I could, go wherever I wanted. I mean, I went to the gym, I work, I wasn't like a complete goof off, but like I woke up at like 11 a.m. I had all the stuff in the world, I could do whatever I wanted. It sucked ass. Okay. It was absolutely garbage.
Yeah, no, I drive myself insane.
You would think that I was in a state of absolute freedom. I had everything paid for me. I could do whatever the hell I wanted, but I had no, it's these but having so being like the idea of like of that, maybe having absolute freedom, having a lot of freedom is actually a bad thing, not just for yourself but as a society. Maybe actually holding yourself up to some standards is a higher virtue than just doing whatever the hell you want.
I think it was, I forget what song it was, but Janis Joplin notoriously, like, I hate Janis Joplin, but that's besides the point. She's notoriously said like freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. It's like that's liberation sort of theology in a nutshell. It's like, I'm going to release myself from the binds of being connected to the world, but it's like, no, self-actualization
comes from having those like connections.
Yeah, that's what makes life, I guess, worth living.
Well, exactly. And it's that this is why the libertine idea of that the way you're free as an individual is when you're separate from everything, that you're just your own man, your own atom. That is fundamentally wrong. What makes you fulfilled as a complete and a whole individual, the self-actualized individual, comes through the family, comes through this community, comes through all these types of mediating institutions, and these roots that because if you try to define yourself, more likely than not, most of the things you'll define yourself by are things that are beyond just yourself.
It's getting back to like my beautiful skyscraper that's all alone, and it doesn't fit anywhere.
So
let me try to be big brain here.
right,
If you're a beautiful skyscraper and there's no one there to observe you, are you really beautiful?
or well, if you're just hideous, you're just a block of concrete, steel, and glass. It's like yes, a bunch of like modernist architects will love you, but most people think you're hideous.
Because the way I think it's just the strive towards betterment, the strive towards that we are flawed in our own fundamental way, and it's the purpose of civilization is civilizing us into becoming a more and in terms of in terms of the family unit, the church, the communities, all these things, these create the tendrils that make us better human beings, and having those standards, and conserving those traditions and standards, and us, we're never going to be perfect, but it's the act of, and we're never going to be like the perfect human, but it's the strive towards making us go beyond our beastly instincts and creating a place where we're self-actualized, fulfilled, and actually have like some sort of
Yeah.
stake in a grander story that we put ourselves in.
Unfortunately, one of Saul Alinsky's famous concepts in Rules for Radicals is purity spiraling and making people live absolutely to their morals. So if a conservative politician has sort of a sex scandal, you run the party through the mud and you completely destroy, I guess, the moral objective. It's like if you do not absolutely embody these objectives, you're done. You're gonna be ridiculed into the ground. No, our ideology is that man has fallen, but he can do better. He can improve himself, and sort of like these elite institutions of soft power need to recognize that there is something that they need to uphold beyond just showing off cans of shit in art museums. It's like no, I don't want to look at like urinals at museums. I want to look at something that is transcendent, something that the late Roger Scruton would be proud of.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
there was a good quote from him. He said that if you build something that's just you, hold up,
I think you're gonna quote his "Why Beauty Matters" documentary.
um, hold up, let me, yeah, probably, but let me find it quickly. Let me see. Oh yeah, so here, if you consider only utility, the things you build will soon. Oh, fuck. Oh yeah, here we go. If you consider only utility, the things you build will soon be useless.
He was talking about a hideous concrete library that it looked good for like 5 years, and then people just didn't want to go into it. It was hideous. It didn't match with the surrounding area, and it fell into ruin. And it was like his hometown. So it's like, what do you actually like? As sort of like a civil engineer, I see these design standards. I'm not an architect. I'm an engineer, but I see these design standards, and they're so, I guess, blocky. And part of my job is to tell architects, no, you can't put that spiral in there. But you kind of do need these sort of traditional structures, the columns, the little leaves, the intricate sort of details that make the eye, that kind of draw the eye towards this beautiful structure.
Yeah, and not only that, it's also the it's kind of rebelling against I think one thing also that's permeating in our culture is maximum efficiency. Just whatever is the most, the most, we're trying to, what's this useful to me? Well, sometimes the most, maybe it's sitting in the back porch as your kids play in the backyard, and you're just listening to the sounds of morning doves, mourn in the wind, in the summer, in the morning light. I mean, what's the value in, well, it's not you don't have to break it down in terms of like, trying to make some sort of like, some sort of scientific reason. Oh, I'm doing this because I think it's good. It's just it's just these moments might not have any economic value. They might not have any sort of like purpose. They're just moments that we live, and we just enjoy. And it's those little things in life that kind of, it's not everything. It doesn't have, not everything has to be useful. Why, can we like, deconstruct this beautiful like temple and make it into like a like this this concrete structure to fit more people? Well, maybe it'll be more efficient, but something, not everything has to be efficient. Everything, there's more better.
It's like, yes, I could in theory design a cathedral that is shaped like a block, or at least its roof is not necessarily a block, but a block that is maximally efficient within the parameters of I need to get butts and seats. But no, there's more to life than butts and seats. There is the sort of sublime, I guess, sound, the cathedral's ruminations whenever you hear your priest give his sermon. No, there's something beyond butts and seats and just people being able to be packed into these structures. There's more to the to Roger Scruton's library than concrete blocks, cheap building materials, and I guess this sort of temporary structure that will quickly decay. And that's kind of this, yeah.
I mean, no, you're hitting it right in the head. It's those, again, it's like when we apply our philosophy in towards like a better society, we build to an objective standard. There's objective rules, and when we build these grand things that last beyond our lifetimes. That's the purpose. Is not because when you build something that's just for the here and now, they did they're there for the here and now, but then like
objective. I think it's something self-evident that comes through something like revelation. I guess it's like the revealed truth beyond truth. I don't want to go full Jordan Peterson, never go full Jordan Peterson, but some things are just revealed to the natural world, just the human proportion, I guess. It's not objective, and if you tried to put it under a microscope, you won't be able to find it. What you need to do is you need to find people who have this eye for I guess, not necessarily like weird, but just interesting sort of ideals that conform to their history and what we want for the future, but also kind of improve upon the past. It's like neoclassical structures, for instance, like the Capitol building, the Lincoln Memorial. They're all Monticello. They're all recreations of sort of the Greco-Roman sort of architecture style, but they're improved with sort of modern, I guess, sort of building capabilities. You can still maintain Paris and build upon Paris within the parameters of this general aesthetic style.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to keep in mind the past and the history, and you have to kind of limit yourself. Like there's a Tao to the world, and yeah.
Oh, you're 100% correct. It's the when you have that firm foundation. I mean, just because we're conservatives, or just we want to conserve what we have, right? It doesn't mean we just are static. It's someone made a good quote from who's the guy? It's H.K. Lewis, or who was it's hold up, H.K.
C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis, yeah, C.S. Lewis. He said that when you're marching towards something, if you took the wrong path, it doesn't matter. Yes, you're progressing, but what you're progressing towards? You're progressing towards a horrible, a dead end. And if it's the difference between, because we're always, it's preserving the fundamental structure, the underlying identity of our society. But then when we're moving towards, hey, we made greater, these grandiose projects, these grandiose, things that we could collectively do in a high trust society. We could continue. It's not like we're static forever, but we're always
Yeah.
but
Like,
we're not marching towards, where we're trying to deconstruct everything. We're marching
like
just
you missed out on this like Discord conversation I had with Dave the distributist. Yes, was it yesterday? Like, yeah, he was like, yeah, you guys, you absolutely love, like, I absolutely love like Renaissance art, but it happened. We have to have an eye for the future, and I guess that's like the sort of, what would you say, like techno-capitalist in them, or like something like a futurist. But we can't keep on smashing our heads and focusing on the past. We need to integrate, I guess. We need to use the goddamn steel and concrete to improve upon these structures, but we need to keep the aesthetic style and maintain standards of beauty. Like, I hate sort of like the Russell Kirks of the world, who kind of just say, I'm not going to use a car because I'm only going to use bicycles because I don't want to move beyond my community, or like see the world beyond my community. No, you have to kind of have, like, the scales have changed. Like you said, like you don't want to stay in your small like Danish town forever, right? You want to kind of, you want to be able to, I guess, go out into the world and seek opportunity. But at the same time, we want to sort of glorify the past, the glorious dead, and and um, and we want something transcendent, and we want to be interconnected, but we also want to have kind of the benefits of modernity,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't want to descend into the BuzzFeed postmodernist sort of ethos.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's the wicked sort of parameters that we have to contend with,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure how we manage it.
It is. I mean, it's gonna be completely. It's a huge. It's like it's not like we're solving like a little. Like it's like this huge problem that has like 20,000 pieces to it, and you have to figure out each single piece and to make it fit right, and changing. So it's a very complicated topic. In term One of the a person in the chat said Big Bang or creation.
I was once on, like, walking around campus, and
Mhm.
a Mennonite sort of evangelical, or like a guy who wanted to like get me into the Mennonite church.
Mhm.
We had a little talk about dinosaurs.
Uh-huh.
He thought they were Adam and Eve lived with dinosaurs, and at some point I was just like, you know, dinosaurs, they kind of existed. You can't really fit the Bible around that. Sorry guys, I can't go with like young Earth guys.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I agree.
it's a little LARPy.
I think for the way I as the way I so I mean, obviously it's out of Big Bang or creation. It's the Big Bang just from the scientific point of view. But in terms of like if you're religious, like the purpose of religion is the faith. It's not like, oh well, it because of Pascal wager, I deducted that God exists. That's not how you.
Yeah,
that's
no.
that's not. It's faith. It's like it doesn't. It's like now so it's like it doesn't matter how exactly we came about. You have faith in the idea that whatever the religion is. So that's the purpose. That's the purpose of religion. It's not it's faith. It's not like some deductive like materialist, because then that you miss the whole point of the religion. The religion is supposed to be transcendent, not like based off science. Like let me deduct why how evolution proves God. That's not the purpose of it. It's supposed to be it's the high. It's a more transcendental thing, more than just like you're this because I think that's the big struggle. They're trying to I mean the best thing you could do is say
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like you can't put God under a microscope,
Mm-hmm.
but your microscope can look at dinosaurs.
Basically, yeah. That's actually good. That's a good.
Yeah.
Good.
Like I've been reading a good bit of G.K. Chesterton recently, and I feel like I'm kind of grasping his whole witticism thing. Like to the chagrin of like my friends. Now I kind of make puns and weird like nice inversions on them. Yeah.
So, I guess we should start wrapping it up.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, how should we end this?
All right. So
I think we said so much grandiose things. I don't know how we're gonna like end from here. I feel like
big brained, too big brained.
Yeah, I kind of stuck from here.
Yeah. How do you end with Orwell and Good?
Oh, how did I end? Oh, that's
yeah.
Well,
I didn't quite get to that part.
How did I end? Well, I think me and him were basically talking about the time preference thing for like a long time, and that was like the main chunk of the art. What we were that was like the main how would you say it? The main point of the whole discussion because of his book, and so I think at the end we just kind of discussed how, I guess, how a civilization would achieve those high. Like, what would a civilization that does realize those high time preferences look like? And I guess I'll leave it to you. What is your society where the individual is fulfilled and self-actualized and actually has a.
All right.
So you talked about all the bad things and the thing that in this world and the things that should be against it, but like in the ideal world of you, like how would the society run?
So this is kind of how I would structure my kind of ideal life, right? Over the summer, I worked with an engineer who built his own house, bought his own land, and he's a very smart technical guy. He bought a bunch of manuals. He was a construction guy. He built this beautiful house of his in the country. He's a church going guy. He's got like 4 kids. He's got a nice big old garden, and he grows his own like fruits and vegetables. He's got a nice he's got a very nice he's got a very nice sort of like rurally like forested area behind him. He works a dead end job, but if I had to choose my kind of ideal lifestyle, I would build my own house, own my own land, grow a good bit of my own food for myself, and I'm so, I guess, I still have this individualistic bug where I need to kind of feel invested in my work. So I would almost certainly own my own sort of either consulting or like direct construction company, engineering company. That's sort of my beautiful, my end dream, to be fully sufficient, loving family, loving God. And I think it's something beautiful, something worthwhile. And I think I could sustain myself on something like that.
That's really beautifully. I'm the same thing. I believe it's when you could see in your own hands in the work in front of you that the land that you owe is yours. That this house that you built is yours. That you're self-sufficient. That you're your own man. I know that sounds like very like this Ayn Randian retardness, but like you're self-actualized in that sense. But you're more than just that individual. That you're a part of that greater community as well, and you're part of while you're your own man, you're a fulfilled man from what you do and from what the basic building blocks of that society. So I'm proud of my people, my nation, my community, my family, and then I'm proud of my achievements as well. So it's like this, everything's interconnected, as you said, into a more wholesome.
That future does not have Netflix or BuzzFeed in it, and I think that kind of gets to the crux of it. You don't need BuzzFeed or Netflix when you have family and you've got community to like, and you have barbecues to go out with your neighbors, and you have charity events with your church, and you have and you can and on the weekends you can go
Go to
out.
like your neighbor to your park, and you could like smell the
Yeah.
fresh air and hear the wind blow, and
Yeah, it's a little sappy, but it's
Mhm.
real.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of that's actually a good point. Real,
Yeah,
it's
real.
real. Yeah, that's actually great.
That's
I
a good
think
way to kind of end it, I guess.
yeah. Yeah, what we're fighting for is realness in the world.
All right.
All right, so thank you guys for watching.
Subscribe to
And,
Clossington. Thank you very
yeah,
much.
yeah, I'll definitely put you in the description to check him out. He's a very cool dude. Spoken for him for 2 hours now. So aim high, wander on from America with Russian love.